There's always something. I remember one of my big talks at DEF CON, it kept cutting out. All right, so I'm going to start with the slides, and then since I'm able to use my own machine, I can perform a demonstration, which is what I'd like to do. So I am very grateful to be here. I appreciate the chance to speak to you all. And I got to see a bunch of your high school students. I was very impressed with the interest in cybersecurity here, which is my thing. So I'm getting involved in cyber war more these days. And so they've already talked about me. I have two websites. I have samsclass.info, where I have free training for everyone. My college is very disorganized, so a few years ago they didn't schedule my class properly, and I decided to just make it open to the whole world, and nobody noticed. So I've just been doing them all that way, so everybody can join my class from anywhere. And I've started a private corporation here, too, for working for companies. And that material is not generally public, but still, you can get a lot of it. And so as I moved, I got older. You know, I started out as a normal hacker where I just saw authority figures as just irritating people in my way with stupid rules, ruining all the fun. And then I got older and became management, and I began to understand that there's another side to it. And I started seeing how many problems are really very difficult to solve. And I think this is a natural evolution of cybersecurity people. You start out on the red team attacking people, and then when you grow up, you move to the blue team and try to defend people because it's much more difficult. There's always a new attack, but mostly people get hurt because they just do the same foolish things they shouldn't be doing. And so I began studying management and politics and government. How can we actually protect people? And so the cyber war is a big issue now. Most of the attacks that we are suffering as individuals when we get phished and our accounts get compromised are actually military weapons, just like most of the physical crime. The criminal gangs get weapons that were originally developed for the military. And so since the nations are fighting a cyber war, there are individuals hurt in the crossfire. So this has been an open secret in the security community for more than a decade, but in 2010, it all became public because Google was personally offended by China hacking them because they had expanded into China and China betrayed them and hacked into Google to steal the data from them, and they went public with this, whereas all the other American companies had been keeping it a secret. And that brought about the modern understanding of the cyber war and the advanced persistent threat. So China had Mandiant was the company that invented modern incident response, and they started with the advanced persistent threat attacker number one, attacking all these American companies and stealing their intellectual property in accordance with China's announced plan to move forward by stealing data that was easier to steal than to develop themselves. And Lockheed Martin developed the kill chain here, where this is what advanced attackers do. They penetrate your network, they hide, they carefully scan through the network, finding all the other parts they want to take care of, and then hide there permanently, like a spy in your network, continuously stealing your data. And when I first heard about this, I, along with everyone else in the business, was horrified. I said, we can't possibly stop this or even detect it. And they had a recommendation of all the things we would have to do to improve our security, and it sounded like science fiction to me. You have to have monitoring, you have to detect the intruders, you have to have layered defenses, you have to have incident response, catching them before they get further. And I thought, we will never have that, but after about 5 years, we now have that at the best companies. You really have to have all this. So these are the main attackers. The number one attacker is, of course, the USA. Just as in the physical world, we're the number one aggressor in the world, in the cyber world. But China is right there. Iran, North Korea, and Russia are also big. And so the threats to the US, Russia is a huge one, although actually Russia's attacks are not very technical. They attack us with propaganda, and they influenced our election, and it was very well done. They are far better at propaganda than Americans, and we are far more gullible and fell for their false accounts. And the technology was part of it, but not an essential part. China has a lot of attacks on us, mostly to steal our military secrets and our industrial secrets. And of course, there's Iran and North Korea. North Korea seems to fund their entire military with money stolen, largely from cryptocurrencies and other techniques with cyber theft. So from 2010, every year there have been more attacks. affecting more and more nations. And here's the scorecard. The United States started with the first attack to do physical damage. This was our attack on Iran, when we used a computer virus in conjunction with Israel to destroy their centrifuges, something that had not previously been considered possible. And Russia has done this a few times. No one else has yet directly destroyed hardware with these attacks, although the Soviets tried recently against Saudi Arabia. And there's a lot of these attacks, every nation attacking every other, and a long timeline of the Chinese attacks, and I have to emphasize these are just the ones we know about. You can assume that for every one we know about, there are many others that were successful. The ones that get caught are the ones that are poorly implemented and fail to properly erase the tracks. So there's only two kinds of companies, the ones that know they've been hacked and the ones that don't know they've been hacked, but they've all been hacked. And so the large number of attacks from every nation go on every other nation, and this is the one that got me involved. I got an email from Saudi Arabia a few years back, a company there saying, we want to hire you to teach cybersecurity in Saudi Arabia, and I didn't even notice it. And then I got a telephone call saying, perhaps you think this is spam, but it's not. We really want to hire you to teach security in Saudi Arabia. And I did, and it's because of this. The Saudis are very afraid. Their oil infrastructure has been attacked several times, and the latest attack from Russia was the one that tried to turn off the safety features in their plant to cause humans to die. And they happened to detect it in time so that people did not die this time, but they are very aware that they are not safe and they don't know how to protect themselves, and they very much want to increase their cybersecurity posture rapidly, and they correctly realize that the United States is a leader and getting training from America is a good plan. So I've been through quite a bit of this. The Russians are increasingly aggressive, and our American leaders have no idea what to do. A large portion of them just want to make friends with the Russians and don't understand that they're attacking us, or they prefer to hide it. And our president very much does not want to hear any of this because it calls into question his legitimacy as a president, so he prefers to pretend it's not happening and fire everyone that tells him the truth about it. So it is a difficult thing to do. But anyway, our tools are very interesting at a technical level. Stuxnet, I remember when this first came out, I was on an airplane to go to a conference like this, and on the airplane, the first version of Stuxnet became publicly known, and I just threw away my talk because I learned how to run the first Stuxnet attack. And I said, forget everything I was going to say, you're going to see this, because it was really awesome. Anyway, it was good, clean fun, so then I moved into malware analysis from this book, which is fantastic because it gives you safe, harmless malware to analyze, which was not available previously, and you could only teach this in closed environments like SANS classes. And then Mandiant, this book is from Mandiant, the people that invented incident response and advanced persistent threat, and they also wrote this one, in incident response, which I've been teaching. So we learn how to make it up to the high level of the largest governments and corporations where you do have a professional team responding to the attacks that you detect. Now, most companies have no ability to detect an attack and no ability to repel an attack anymore, and the best ones have it. And another part of it is exploit development. This is learning how to take over machines and improve the quality of attacks, a necessary part of defense. So anyway, now I'm going to start working for Splunk. I learned about Splunk. I tried using open source tools to monitor networks, and they are very painful, things like ELK and Security Onion. Splunk is the Cadillac, and I went and got Splunk certification, and Splunk has these contests that are very nice, and I've been using them for quite a while to detect things. So I set up a server with some Splunk demonstration data. They give you some practice data. We have 1 million events here, and you can search through them on a plain, simple device. And you can find the traffic that stands out of those 1 million events very easily. So this is the main technique we use to detect intrusions, if you can afford it. Splunk is very expensive. They're the most expensive and the best tool. But anyway, let me show you the demonstration, which is why I'm using my own machine here. It'll take me a few seconds to boot it all up. So as most of the demonstrations I've seen, we're using Kali Linux, the standard American pen testing distribution, and I've got an Android cell phone here. simulated, of course, and see if it's going to continue to give me trouble. Right. Well, there is always something. I'm going to restart this one, and then I'll just abandon this demonstration if it's not going to work for me. I'll give it one more try. All right. I'm on the internet. That's the problem. Okay. All right, this is very common. I hope you're not impatient with it. This is why I like live demonstrations. You always have to overcome some problems. So my host machine is on the internet. And my client machine. All right. Yep, that's the problem. All right, well, let's see. I'll give it one more try, and then I'll just have to abandon this part. Yep, all right. Well, let me go back to my slides. All right. I can demonstrate to you Splunk then, and that may be a good thing to do. Let me try that one. If I have the internet, I should be able to show you my live Splunk server. So let's go there. All right. All right, I tested the internet right before this, but that does appear to be the problem. I've lost my internet somehow. Well, I'm stuck with my slides if I can't get the internet to work. Try 2. All right. Well, we will carry on. Now, one thing I'd like you to do, I'll leave this up towards the end, is take this survey so we can find out how we can help you more. But I think I'd like to show you my Android work, but I really need the internet. All right, let me see if I can figure out what's going on here. Cinnamon Grand. Working right before I came here, and it looks good here. All right, let's try the main website and see if that's going to work. Okay, this will do. So let me talk to you about this Android work, which is here, there. All right, so I've done a lot of work with Android mobile devices, and Android apps are typically extremely insecure. So they have these problems. These are well defined by the OWASP, the most common one actually being problems on the server and not problems on the phone. But this one here is one I find almost no one understands. When you distribute an Android app, you distribute the source code with the app. And an amazing number of companies do not seem to understand this. So, I tried all these major companies, and all of them are vulnerable to code modification. Now, this has also been true of their websites. The websites until recently were not secure, and when they did switch to HTTPS, they mostly made websites that were HTTP websites with HTTPS buttons on them. And their apps make similar errors. Well, so I told the Bank of America, I'm able to take your app, unpack it, modify the code, repack and re-sign it, and make a forged app which still works. You can still reach your server and log in, but my modified app contains a Trojan, and it can do anything I want. In particular, it can steal the password and credit card numbers out of the app. And I told them, and I got no response at all. This is another thing that is a big problem. All these companies have no way to report vulnerabilities to them at all. There is no vulnerability disclosure process. There are no bug bounties. There is not even a contact email. So I would try to contact them and often not be able to get to any of them. So I sometimes was reduced to contacting the CEO of a major corporation on Twitter. But anyway, I contacted all these companies and reported their vulnerabilities, and a few of them actually fixed the problem, but a lot of them did not. And after I was done with them, I did the stock trading companies with similar problems. And TD Ameritrade deserved special mention because they actually made their product worse after I reported the vulnerability. They completely misunderstood my report, where I modified their app to steal the password and made their own app so it put the password in the log where it's not safe. And the insurance companies are also vulnerable. So I found a lot of these. Now this demonstration, which I wanted to show you, was of Equity Pandit, and for some reason it won't let me do it live here. Yeah, but what this app is currently in use in India. Here, let me bring up my slides. I've got slides from yesterday where you can at least see what it looks like. And that is here. All right. So let me get down to that. All right, that's what I wanted to show you. So this app is currently in use by millions of people in India to do financial work of some sort. I haven't found out exactly what it does, but this is spectacularly bad. In this app, if you want to steal anybody's password, all you have to do is try to log into their account. And when you do, it sends the correct password from their server onto your phone and then compares the password you typed in on the phone to the one that came in from the outside world. So what you see here on the last line here, the first password is the correct password. The second password, AA, is the false password I typed in. So you can check anybody's password at any time. So I gave this as homework to my students in Saudi Arabia because I told them about this years ago and they didn't patch it. This is called white hatting, and I'm well known for doing a lot of this. This is considered a somewhat insane and disgraceful activity. You find a vulnerability in an app, in a company that doesn't know you're doing it, then you tell them, even though they haven't hired you to do that. This is not illegal in America anyway, but it is considered unprofessional and insane because nobody ever says thank you. They don't patch it, they usually just get mad at you, so generally there's no point to it, but I have a purpose because by doing this I can give my students more interesting homework. The first time I taught an Android security class, there was a fake app that had a whole bunch of real security problems, and it was very old and very unpleasant to use and hard to set up. And the students didn't have any fun, so I did research with real apps, hundreds of them, and I have a policy which I attempt to obey the standards of vulnerable, responsible disclosure, which is, I tell people, and if they ignore me for 30 days, now they're homework. Now I assign it to students and everybody and make up YouTube videos and so on. And typically they continue to do nothing until they get humiliated enough. Now when I found a vulnerability in a Microsoft product, and I told them and they didn't care, I continued to harass them until I went to a conference like this. I was at DEF CON with about 2,000 people, and I killed their latest version on stage, and a Microsoft guy was right in the front row, and then he said, all right, how did that work? Then they fixed it. But that's how it works. It's a form of political activism. You have to humiliate people more and more until they care. So anyway, this is a spectacular case of an insecure app, and I can't get them to care. And when I assigned this for homework to my students in Saudi Arabia, the organizer said, oh, I don't think this is legal in Saudi Arabia. You hack into a server and steal their password. And I said, but you don't have to hack into their server to steal my password. You just need to ask it politely, and it will tell you my password. You say, well, I still don't think that's all right here. So there was another one, which I actually never published publicly, although I've mentioned it at a couple of conferences for political reasons, and this was the University of Houston. I don't know how it works here, but in America, the most important people at universities are the alumni. The students are basically ground underfoot and not very important, and the teachers are pretty expendable too, but the alumni are the graduates who donate money to the college. And they are super important, and that's why football is the most important activity at any college, because that's what makes the alumni come back and make more donations. And so they made a special app for the university alumni here, and you put it on your phone. You can search for yourself here with a few letters from your name, and then you find people that match you. So when I saw this, I was a little concerned. I said, well, this is a bit of a privacy exposure. Anybody can find the names of people and when they went to the college, but maybe that's all right. It's possible that somewhere in the terms of service people have consented to this. But then I went down to look at the login screen. You log in with your name, and you log in with your university ID. Now, this app did not use secure transmissions over the internet. It wasn't just unencrypted. That is rather rare these days, that anyone will actually send sensitive information with no encryption at all. But what is very common is they implement HTTPS incorrectly. Now, an HTTPS connection, as you can see, it's trying to make an HTTPS connection here, and it is supposed to first connect to the server, get a certificate, then send the certificate to the original issuer to verify that it is the correct certificate before using it, but a large number of apps don't bother with the last step. They turn that off, and the user can't tell, and it works fine under normal conditions, and they just distribute it that way, and people use it. So that's what these people did. So I was able to put Burp in the middle here. Burp sends a fake certificate, and the app accepts it and uses the wrong encryption key so I can see the data. So that is a flaw, and that is a flaw that is so serious that some companies will actually fix it when I tell them. But the real flaw is much worse. And here was a subtle one, which some of you may have noticed. When I send the first name and last name up to the server to search, this is what the app actually sends. It sends substring of Houston user first name and substring of last name. The correct app will send the username and password to the server, and then it will do logic on the server put there by the developer. But this is sending a line of active code up to the server, which is then run on the server. So I have a command injection vulnerability here. I could replace this red text with any command, and it would run that command on the server. This is not how you do it. You do not pass lines of code from a client up to the server to be run on the server. So that implies I could totally take over their server. But anyway, I don't need to, because look at this response. I send a request up that's only a few hundred bytes, and I get a reply that is 300 kilobytes big. Now, when you log into a server, you send it a name and password, the answer should be yes or no. It shouldn't be 300 kilobytes of junk. So what is that junk? It is the entire user database. Every single alumni's name, credit card number, password, address, phone numbers, and everything else. Every time anybody attempts to log in, it downloads all that data onto the device. Now, I gave a talk like this at another conference, and one of the attendees came and explained to me that they are taught to write apps this way because they are more responsive in case of poor internet connection. All the data is on the device, and I think the same thing is going on with Equity Pandit. This will give the user a better experience, and they just are unaware of the monstrous security flaws. Now I have everybody's password. You just send it over the internet in safely, and you put it on a device where I can steal them all, but they don't know that. So I found an awful lot of apps do this. Another thing an enormous number of apps do is they store an extra copy of your password on the device, which is very strange. Let me skip some of this and get down to Target. I don't know why, when we invented smartphones and apps, we went backwards by 2 decades and started doing everything the wrong way. And so Target, the Australian Target app, actually does the right thing. When you log in, you send up your name and password, it's at the bottom here, and the server replies with a cookie that is just a long random number, and you store the cookie on your device. This is what all browsers do. If you click Remember Me, it stores a cookie. It doesn't store a copy of your name and password because that would be very dangerous. But many of them don't, and Staples is an example. So the Staples app, when you log in, it stores the password local. Now it looks, in the first place, even if this was good encryption, this is a terrible idea. You should not be storing a copy of the password at all. You should just store a cookie. The reason why is because people reuse passwords. So if I steal your password from a little Staples app, it's probably the same password for your bank and your email. So throwing your password around like trash is highly irresponsible. But as far as I can tell, half the commercial apps do this. And not only do they store a password locally, they store it using the wrong kind of encryption. So I went and found a good article recommending this. They say, if you want to store sensitive information, here's how you do it. In the first place, don't. Get over it. Whatever logic flaw makes you think you really need to store a secret like that, you're wrong. But if you do want to store it, there's a thing called the Android keychain, which is the safe place to put secrets, or you encrypt it with a public key. Now, the key is not anywhere on the phone, it's on the server. That would be reasonably safe. But what they all do is either 4 or 5. The worst ones store it in plain text on the phone, and most of them store it with private key encryption on the phone. So that's what happens here. The password is stored, and so all I have to do is find the key. And I learned a trick from the Burp book. If you just make a password that is 32 identical characters, then you can spot that the first half of the encrypted password is duplicated again, and that shows that they're using AES in electronic codebook mode, which has this ridiculous property that identical blocks of plain text will turn into identical blocks of ciphertext. And then so they stored it with private key encryption. So now you've taken a secret you've hidden on the phone, and you've now created another secret, the key, which you have to hide on the phone. And you can't hide anything on an Android phone. I can see the source code. So I can just read your code and see how you built the key. And it's not that hard at all. The key is made out of the brand name, and then the device name, the model name, the serial number, then the package name, and then something called extra salt at the end. Then you write it through SHA-1, and that's the key. And since I can read the source code, I can totally find it. And so I notified them I can totally steal passwords out of Staples, so they ignored me. So I signed it to my students' homework, stealing my credit card number out of my Staples account. Then I made videos of stealing the credit card number out of my Staples account. Then I went to give a talk in Washington, D.C. like this before Congress people, and suddenly it didn't work anymore. They had patched it. And what they did, though, I haven't had a chance to go back and test it again. They just made it so their app notices if it's running on a rooted device, which is a very thin layer of defense. And this is the thing to know about vulnerability disclosure. Typically, people respond. They don't understand that security is actually important, so they just want it to get you to shut up. So they just want to do the smallest possible change to make it go away. So this is what you usually get when they patch the vulnerability you've reported. They just block the exact path without actually fixing the underlying problem. So many apps store your password in plain text, just sitting there on the phone, and the ones that don't typically encrypt it with reversible encryption. So if you have 50 apps on your phone, you have 25 extra copies of your password stored in each of those apps for no reason at all. We solved this problem for the internet in the early 90s. You just store a cookie. I don't know where they got this idea to store the password, but it is extremely common, so there must be some school training app designers to do it this way, and it's a popular technique. So I contacted all these companies and told them, and there are many other examples of these unsafe practices. When I first, in the bad old days of 2011 and 2012, I was talking to Beauchamp about this because they had some LulzSec members here a few years ago. Everybody was stealing data and dumping it out publicly so we could all see what people were doing. This is the kind of thing you normally cannot see. And so I thought the worst thing you could do is store your password in plain text, but that's not true. You can do something worse. You can just give everyone the same password. Like Buchanan Bond, everybody has a password of Buchanan Bond 1. And Reeves and Associates, everyone has Law 321 with a couple letters as their password. Sparklan, everybody's password is just Sparklan, and so on. So it goes. Then you can store it with Base64. This company, BForward, a Japanese company, they said that they used commercially reasonable encryption for their password, but what that means is they just scramble it with Base64, and all Base64 does is group the bits 6 at a time instead of 8 at a time, so it doesn't really conceal anything. MIT had a server using MD5 hash rate hashes, which are very easy to crack. And then there's just basic logic errors, like locking a byte this way. This happened to San Francisco parking meters and also to encrypted hard drives. This was a big scandal when it came out. The MyFare cards, or these aren't MyFare cards, that's Spark. But the smart parking meters, San Francisco put them in. You can pay for your fare with these things. And the way it works is you hold up a card to the meter asks your card if you have enough money, and if your card says yes, it lets you pay. The money is, so all you have to do is program a card that always says yes, and you will always have money. It doesn't go the right way. This is fantastic how often these foolish logic mistakes are made. So encrypting your storage devices is also very similar, and this is to some extent the fault of the government or the standards body. When you have a encrypted hard drive, you could encrypt it with one key, like based on your thumbprint or something, and that could be easy and relatively secure, but for some reason, it wouldn't meet the official standards for hard drive encryption. The official standards say you must consider the case of multiple users who will have a different login and a different key for each area on the hard drive. And that turns out to be so difficult that what everybody does is they put all that in software on the computer. So the hard drive is actually encrypted in a simple way, and the decryption and authentication is handled in the app on the computer, which can be modified. So it's a similar illogical activity. So there are all these laptops with hard drives, and even if they're encrypted, they tend to be very easy to get into because the actual decryption is done in software, and you can hack it by modifying the software because your password is noticed by the computer, which then uses an obvious simple password to decrypt the drive. So there's a bunch of hacking tools that unlock this generation of encrypted hard drives. Another one that happened was the first generation of encrypted thumb drives. There was an expensive one called IronKey that actually worked, but the rest of them were not actually encrypted at all. They just put an app, so when you plugged them into a Windows machine, it would ask you for a password before allowing you to see what was on the drive, but the contents of the drive was not actually encrypted. All right. And so anyway, after I'd seen all this, I realized it is abundantly clear that developers and managers do not understand basic mathematics, and they don't understand encryption, and they don't bother to make sure they're using the right kind of encryption, so I realized I should start teaching this stuff. And the big lesson I have here is many managers are intimidated by technical management. They feel like they have to understand all the detailed technologies that are underneath them, and I would argue this is completely not true. If you're the captain of a ship, your job is to drive the ship. It is not to fix the engines and know exactly every bolt. You have staff to do that, but what the staff has is tunnel vision. At my college, one of the technical staff decided to put up a list of all the students in every class so teachers could look them up, and they made it public so the whole world could see it. Now, I happen to know this is dangerous and illegal. There's a privacy regulation against it, so I told the person who put that page up, and they totally ignored me. Then I told their manager, and they totally ignored me, and I learned something that is a fundamental rule. Nobody will care about breaking federal law and destroying the whole company except people with a C in front of their title. You have to go all the way to the top. So even well-intentioned, intelligent, technical people only think in their own little world. They can't see that they're driving the company off a cliff. The only people that can see are up at the sea level. And they have to ask the hard questions. They have to ask, what data did you collect? Where did you put it? Why is it safe? How have you protected it? And don't tell me it's too complicated to tell me how you protected it. It's not safe unless you can simply tell me how is it protected. This happened at a somewhat non-technical level with Enron. Enron was an American company that produced nothing. All they did was purchase energy and then withhold it to make the price go up, and then sell it when the price went up. And they exploited a California contract to purchase energy, so they were able to make the price double and triple and go up by 10. And they caused blackouts and created a ton of chaos and made a pile of money, and they hauled them before Congress. And Congress said, if I am your customer and I give you money, what do I get? And they had no answer. And they said, this is not good. You should be able to answer that question. And right now we're seeing it with initial coin offerings and cryptocurrency. I used to work in contracts for the Federal Trade Commission doing pyramid schemes, and I am dead set against cryptocurrency. It's all just a giant pyramid scheme because you don't get anything for your money. I'd be interested if somebody can actually explain to me any use case for blockchains. There's only one I've ever heard of, Lockheed Martin's plan to control supply chain management, which might possibly be of some value, but there's a huge religion of people that believe that blockchains and cryptocurrencies are somehow going to solve world problems, and I don't think there's any truth in it at all. It is just a shiny object to confuse you while they pick your pocket. That's what the ICOs are. And it doesn't pass this simple test, which I heard China is saying now. They're asking people, look, you're Bitcoin mining, you're using up all this electricity, and what are you producing? And they get, and they say, well, if I can't get a simple answer of what you're producing with all that electricity, this is a waste of our resources and you shouldn't be doing it. And I think they are correct. Anyway, so I highly recommend that managers return to their job of managing and be unashamed of the fact, if you don't know all the latest technology, because somebody has to be thinking this way, and trust me, the most brilliant scientists and technical people do not think this way. Another example was the Manhattan Project. They got the smartest physicists in America to build nuclear bombs, then they used them, and they all said, oh my God, the bombs killed people. Who could have seen this coming? It's not that they're stupid people. There's something about loving technology that dazzles you, and you think only in a small world of how to overcome these problems, and you don't think at a high management level. It's a different kind of mind. So anyway, that was my point there. And so anyway, I think I have a slide here they wanted me to show you. So I would like to know what you get out of these things and how we can help you. So I'd appreciate it if you people could take this survey. You'll find it at that page. If you get a chance, I don't have a prize or anything, which would be nice, but I would like to know what people get from these things. I've had some people talk about my videos and say I should make them differently, and now I have the support of a product team and such to try to guide me into producing better products, so I'm interested in what people may wish to say. Can I take questions, or is that in some other way here? You have a different technique? A panel. Okay, there's a panel to take questions later. All right. I think there was something else at the start of this one I would throw in if I had time. I was supposed to have a live demo, but it failed on me. Yeah, I thought this was interesting for the role of chief security officers. This is Kaspersky. They surveyed them. And they found, what I hope is no surprise to anybody, security breaches are inevitable. Everybody is going to get hacked, just like you're going to have some employees that get sick and some employees that are dishonest. There will be some hacks on your network. And the number one risk is cloud computing. But cloud computing is so valuable, you have to do it anyway. So this, I think, is the big trend I've seen in the last couple of years in the security industry, which I am very glad to see. Security people used to think they are special and holy, like priests or something, and not part of business. And now they have pretty much grown out of it and realized we are just part of the business, just like development and research and sales and legal and HR. We are just part of the business, and we're here to support the business. So if the business wants to go to the cloud, and the security team says the cloud is not very safe, they say to you, well, tough, mitigate the risk because the cloud is valuable to business, and your job is not to stop our business from succeeding, it is to help our business succeed, and that is what we have to do. So when people get hacked, they have a lot of consequences, and people are under a lot of pressure, and the chief security officers feel like they're under pressure from all the complex IT architecture, and that's what motivated me to design a lot of my talks, is I highly recommend not doing that. I think the security officers are being confused and failing in their responsibility. You are not supposed to know every technical detail. There is no reason for that at all. What you are supposed to do is understand the big picture and where the company is going and what it means. And that is what your technical people will never do. And I used to be one of those technical hacker nerds that just thought management were a bunch of idiots because they didn't know what I knew, and I had no respect for what they knew, but I got over it. I realized that actually knowing where we're going, what's around the corner, what's going to happen to our industry, what is the government going to do to us, those are really important questions that are not technical, and somebody has to be paying attention to them. So technical people are brilliant, but they need supervision. They are like children. They will do something foolish and disastrous and not even know it. So I'd like to see the management take up their correct role as the adult supervision, adding a different perspective on what the technical people do, and if we can work together, then we can secure companies better. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Where is Sam? Hi, Sam. Good morning. I watched your class, your video last night. I'm so happy that you teach your classes, but I'm so happy that, try to not to spread it so much, because, we'll talk about what Cellebrite does. We, in fact, our company exploit the vulnerabilities that Sam is talking about. So we actually so software is done by people today. Some of it, by the way, is by machine, but the software that is done by people is vulnerable. And Cellebrite wants to exploit these vulnerabilities because we want to make the world safer. So we have a bunch of white hat hackers that sits in a lab all day and find exploitation, vulnerabilities, exploit whatever we can. And today, we're all about digital information and we're all connected. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do today with our digital information. So, as you can see, the world is, I don't need to say, but today everything is connected and changing fast. You can see the penetration of mobiles. And as you can see, sorry, hard. They've done it a little bit slow. Let's do it this way. Okay. So how many active unique mobile? By the way, if I'll check with you, probably each of you have one or two mobiles. I read it yesterday. There is about 20 million people in Sri Lanka, if I'm not mistaken. How many mobile accounts in Sri Lanka? Do you know? 28 million. Okay, so obviously more mobile accounts than people. So we all carry our mobiles, right? And I keep saying to my kids, you know, if I go to work and I have my mobile with me, there is no problem. If I go to work and the mobile is not with me, I return home to take it. Because it's even, you know, it's all my life. And we keep all the data on our mobiles, and guess what? The data is not secured, okay? So Cellebrite became famous about 4 years ago. There was a case, the FBI reached out to Apple, asking them to unlock a phone regarding a case of the terror attack San Bernardino. And eventually the FBI didn't need the help of Apple because allegedly some company managed to crack the iPhone. So I cannot confirm if Cellebrite was involved, but since then we worked around the world. We are today supporting practically any law enforcement in the world to allow them to go into your mobiles. And go into your mobiles is only if you are doing something wrong. So today, police and law enforcement trying to fight the crime, the cyber crime. And the only way today to get information and to investigate and to find this evidence is going through mobiles. Because through the mobiles, you can actually access to any piece of data that a person has, or you can actually understand what is the relation of between people or what they're trying to do. So this is probably not a big secret. Computer and desktop percentage is declining. Most people today, of course, all of you here in the room still using laptop, but if you look on young people, most of them today, probably if they use the laptop or desktop is for the for school, but probably when they grow up, they will not be buying or using a laptop or a desktop. Everything will be on the mobile, and of course the IoT devices, which will continue to spread around, will take over, and that's why Cellebrite is focusing on the mobile. So we invented, or we were part of the early days of digital forensics. So back in 2006, before the smartphone came out, we started our journey in the digital intelligence by actually copying data from one phone to the other. Remember the days that you go to the retail shop with your Nokia phone to copy your contacts from one phone to the other? You look back, it's like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. It's funny that we needed to have somebody to help us to copy the data. Everything today on the cloud, so obviously our company changed. And we started supporting the law enforcement. actually to be able to extract the data from your devices into computer in order actually to start utilizing and analyzing this data. So how many of you using WhatsApp? I'm sure that most of the people in the room is using WhatsApp. Where is all the data of WhatsApp is stored? Not on your mobile. You can see sometimes it's backing up to the cloud. So obviously, all the apps that we have is backing all the data on the cloud. As Sam said, the cloud is where everything is going. In fact, all the storage of the world, including, you will not believe it, but it's moving there. The government information is actually going on cloud. So in Singapore, the authorities, the government authorities, the police authorities, tax authorities, everybody, they signed an agreements with the three main cloud players to start utilizing, of course, a private cloud in a matter, but they start allowing the storage on the cloud, and they really, I think they're doing the right thing, because people that manage clouds, people from Amazon, from Microsoft, they manage the cloud, they know how to deal with security threats. If an organization, a government, a police force, having their own storage, their own data sites, it will be hacked. And these, the people that deals every day with cloud and knowing how to secure the cloud is actually the people that will be able most likely to protect the information. So don't be afraid of putting your stuff on the cloud, but nevertheless, even, so the data is stored on the cloud, right? So the WhatsApp messages go on the cloud, and guess what? Nothing is deleted. So if you think that information that you deleted, obviously from your phone, you know, today WhatsApp even gives you an option, delete the message, delete the image, and so on. So you're happy that the people that chatting with you cannot see the message that was not intended for them. All this data is available. It's actually, sometimes it's on the phone until the data is recycled or the memory is recycled. But even if it's deleted from the phone, it was backed up to the server. And it will stay on the server for many, many years. I don't know, forever. And there is a way to get to this data. So, you know, what people, you know, the technology makes our life easier. So it's easier to use the mobile apps, and it's easier because nobody likes to remember passwords, right? We use less and less passwords, or we copy our passwords. And that's why the mobile apps actually allow you to log into your accounts automatically. So if you have Gmail on your mobile and you register and you sign in once, it will remember your authentication and allow you next time you click on the icon for the Gmail, you access to the mobile app. Of course, what's is going to happen in the back, there is a communication between your mobile and the server to authenticate. This is done by a security token, which resides on your phone. So all the apps stores security token with most of them, if they do a good job, they will have a validity period of those tokens. And this gives the ability for the app to bypass or to do the authentication process without you putting your password again and again and again every time you want to log in. So these tokens is kept on your phone. So if I get your phone, I can get to your tokens. So this is what Cellebrite is doing and helping today to the law enforcement. If there is a case that the investigation needs to be done, and investigation can be from various reasons. It can be terror attack. Unfortunately, one happened in Sri Lanka recently. By the way, we came to help to the authorities when that happened here in Sri Lanka. And so terror attack, of course, is the extreme cases, but it can be also, you know, other cases, homicide, smuggling, drugs. So we work with different departments. We work well also with tax authorities that sometimes they would like to investigate tax fraud. We work with insurance company and consulting firm, and we work with banks, because banks, as we all know, frauds, unfortunately. In many cases, the fraud is also from people inside. So the first thing today that you need to know that about digital information, the first thing that investigators to do today are looking to get is the phones. The phones of people involved or allegedly or suspectedly involved in the crime, or the phones of eyewitness. For instance, if there is some fight on the street and somebody is stabbing the other, or there is somebody trying to shoot in the street, there'll be people taking a photo, imagine, or taking a video of this incident. So this is going to become an evidence. So the police or other authorities, they will look for or will ask you to give you the phone because they would like to extract the information that you took as an evidence. And you need, of course, you need to have a tools that does it forensically sound. Why is it important to have a tool that can do it forensically? Because data can be faked. So if the law enforcement will not be able to use tools to extract the data from the cloud or from the phone in a forensically sound way, the information that they might get, like the video file, might be tampered or faked. The images or the text messages might be fake. Deep fake is today growing in the world. I don't know if all of you know about deep fake. It's basically altering information, the data, the images. We all know about fake news. So think about it, of course, by using AI. You can actually alter video of people talking and other data sources. And there are tools to identify what is fake or what is not. And of course, I think in the future it will be very crucial. Most of the cases in court will need to prove that the data that was examined and was shared to court to convict, or there will be a need to really prove that the data is real and was extracted and from the actual criminal or from the victim. So interesting about consuming data, you can see that APAC is leading. It is obvious, this is Asia have the biggest population in the world. So obviously, we consume more data. By the way, I didn't introduce myself, I'm sorry. I'm originally from Israel, but recently I spent my time in Singapore, running across Asia region and working with different law enforcement. But I grew up in Israel. I worked in security and defense. And I was almost 30 years ago, I was part of the army unit that invented encrypted mobile for the Israeli army. Back then it was the head of the edge of the technology. Today encryption is on our phones, on any app. But back then it was, we worked with Motorola on that. So criminals are using the technology very well. You have to remember they are getting more and more sophisticated. Some of them really, as Sam said and showed, they're doing everything, the darknet and others. They are not on the street, If you look at Singapore, the crime rate in Singapore is, there are 200 burglaries a year. They have 50 cases of cyber attack, 50 cases a day. So the war today against crime moved to the cyber security. And luckily, companies like Cellebrite and others, we are trying to do our best to help to protect the world and make it safer. So we are trying to provide the tools to help the law enforcement to track the things that criminals are doing on the web and off the web. And criminals are using, they're meeting online instead of the streets, obviously. And they're increasing the use of encrypted devices. Many times we will see, and interesting, I'll not explain the exact case, but there was one terror attack that we were part of. By the way, Cellbrite is anytime there is unfortunate incident in the world, we will come to support the law enforcement, and we do it free of charge. Usually what we come to do is to help to the law enforcement and authorities to actually take the information from the site, mobile phones of the victims or of the terrorists or others, and try to extract the data to understand very quickly who was involved in the crime. Because usually it's not a single person. Maybe somebody is shooting, is the actual shooter, but there is a gang or there is organization around it. So we come and try to do a very quick analysis of the data. Many times the phones are locked, and luckily today, Cellbrite is able to unlock the latest phones, including iOS 13 that just launched. Sam, don't quote me, but it's... so there is no phone today in the world, and we are the only one, at least officially, that are able to unlock any phone, iPhone or Android phone. And we provide this service only for law enforcement and government. We don't provide it for the public, private sector. So, for instance, if somebody wants to check if his wife is cheating on him, then we will not be able to help you. I know. In Cellbrite, there is, we are not allowed, people in the company are not allowed to use our technology on their own phone, seriously, because it's a weapon. You can take the phone of somebody you're interested to know, and you put it into the system, and of course we can unlock it, but also you can find all the information that was trying to be hid. In fact, if I will ask anybody here to give me his phone, none of you will give me his phone, not because I'm working for Cellbrite. It's so precious to us, and so, we keep so many secrets on our phone, right? We don't want anybody to get to our phone. So imagine, it's right, keep it safe. When I joined Cellbrite, I did a test with my own phone just to understand the technology capabilities. I will never do it again. And I thought that I'm secured, I'm coming from the security business, and I know what the chances that the data will be leaked, and I'm trying to keep a low profile, although I'm a business person, so I still need to use social media and others. But I was shocked because the phone, I tried to, disable all the functions that are set up by default, like for GPS tracking and others. I tried to really go into the setup for the phone and disable everything. Guess what? It doesn't work, okay? I don't know if you know, people don't want to be tracked, right? This is obvious. You don't want to, unless, we all try, I'm tracking my kids, but when they will know how to prevent it, I'm sure they will. So the apps are collecting data, and we all give a consent for this data collection, right? Because when we install the apps, there is this terms and condition, please, I agree, blah, 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 blah. Nobody reads it, right? But you sign, yes, you accept it. This is, in those terms and conditions, it says that you give the authority for the apps or the vendor to take all the data from you. So we give our consent. We cannot say we didn't give it, and we do it because we want to use the free apps. So how they make money? I'm sure that people here in the room knows, or some of you know, they make money from advertisement. Advertisement today is all about profiling. You have to profile the information or people, and you need to know as much information as you can. I heard just recently that companies like Facebook and others, they're collecting 19,000 data points on each person, 19,000, okay? A lot of these data points is about your locations. It's about your location and our location. I'm also using Facebook, although not so much. So the apps have to control or to know where you are and where did you travel for your pleasure, and where you travel to work, and what do you do while you're traveling. So they collect this information, and information is tracked by the apps even if the GPS tracking is off, okay? Take a note. So we know where you are. We can extract the information, we can say where you were, and we can use this later on if you did something harmful to show that you were in the location that presumably you said that you weren't. So a lot of footprint is left on the digital in the world. So, but Twitter and the other company trying to prevent. You can see suspended 3,000 accounts of terrorism, and we all read about the apps trying to prevent terror and other malicious things. They're doing decent job, but I don't think they do a good job, and I think social media is, you know, we cannot, we can't live without it, but it makes the world really, really dangerous for our kids. So when investigators, they want to investigate cases of child exploitation, they will look for the footprint of the predators, and the footprint will help them to answer the 5 questions: where, when, why, what, and how. And you know, guys trying to do stuff criminally on the internet, they still have their footprint. They're smart. But they will have a footprint, and there is ways to track and get the information. And in many cases, this is the only way to prevent the next crime. By able to take the information, by the way, Cellebrite today, we need the phone to be in the hands of the law enforcement in order to get the data. And this is our decision. We took a decision not to use our tools to exploit by remote, so to take control by remote on phones. But there is, of course, capabilities with technology similar to us and others to take access to offensively grab information from phones, even without the knowledge of the person using the phone. In our case, the person knows that the information is with us because the phone is with us. So the law enforcement will take the phone, extract the data. By the way, sometimes it's with the person consent, sometimes it's without the consent, of course, if they is a suspect. But eventually, we will be able to, if the phone is with the police, we'll be able to unlock the phone, extract the data, and get all the information from the phone or from the cloud. And we are trying, this is, you know, we are trying to to utilize the vulnerabilities that Sam talked about, and they are there. The reason why we can get the data is not because it's openly given to us. It's because we are able to use vulnerabilities to get the data. So we are able to take workarounds on iPhone security in order to unlock the phone, or sometimes we actually bypass the security mechanism completely in order to extract the data. So Sam was talking about USBs and other devices. In many of the devices, the security or the authentication process is not really so strong. So you can find ways to bypass or override the security. In many cases, since we want to do it in a forensically sound way, we will not do we will try not to damage the data. For us to, if we damage the data, then there is no use. So we are doing brute forcing, but we're not doing things that eventually will be affecting the data. Okay. I'll jump for this. So what we do is basically to meet the challenges of law enforcement and digital policing today. And by the way, this is all over the world. All over the world, law enforcement and non-law enforcement. By the way, some of the information I'm sharing here is for the private sector, because there are companies today that are dealing with the same thing. The banks dealing with the same stuff. They have a lot of cyber crimes, fraud or non-related in their banks and other corporates and financial institute. They need to access, so when they need to investigate any crime, they will need to take the data or unveil the data. Then they will need, and this is very important, so we all overwhelmed with the data. So I talked with you and I explained that we can extract all the data, but you can imagine how Huawei is going to launch this year a phone with 1 terabyte storage. This is the size that used to be something that people, you know, have the entire room, a computer with the entire room with such a storage. So the data is overwhelming. So it's not only about the data that you extract, how much volume you can extract, but it's actually how you fine-tune the information, how do you analyze the information and get this special piece of info that you wanted from the overwhelming data or pile of data. And this is what we are offering also. And this is thanks to AI solution. You can actually do a lot of analytics today to process things faster. For instance, we can process a phone with any images and in a matter of minutes probably, give you information if there is child abuse or pornography on this phone. So some of the cases you want to be able to understand if a certain person is part of the pornography industry, but you don't want the people, the police people, you know, to take a phone and start, okay, let's view which image he has there. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, right? I have probably on my phone 20,000 images. It will take me somebody a week. So you can run an algorithm, an AI algorithm, and using hashing to actually to understand if there are images on the phone which consider child pornography or so. And these tools are today advanced, and you can actually use those tools to make things faster and to be able to, you know, to get to the information, or to get to the wisdom, I call it, that you need. Because it's not about, the world is not about getting more data. It's the world is about getting more wiser, and to get the wisdom from the data. This is what we are trying to achieve.
To help create a safer world, you need to harness digital data to accelerate investigations. 85% of relevant evidence is now digital, because that's so much of all our lives. It should be helping. More information means more leads and more ways to resolve cases. But it also means a whole new maze of data points to navigate and understand. It can seem impossible to find your way through it all, let alone move as fast as you need. Especially when criminals are mastering and exploiting this digital world at lightning speed. It's time to turn digital evidence into digital intelligence. A holistic approach to data that helps you eliminate the noise, quickly identify the most essential information, and streamline start-to-finish processes so you can safeguard everything you're responsible to protect. How do you do this? You need tools that help you swiftly access data and collect it in forensically sound ways to preserve evidence integrity. You need solutions with advanced algorithms and machine learning to pinpoint critical pieces of digital evidence and facilitate efficient and effective collaboration so you can complete more investigations faster than ever. You need digital intelligence. Whether it's matching the right resources to your existing investigative workflows or creating new ones, Cellebrite will be here to partner with you and make the world a safer place.
So, I got the ticket to finish, so I'm about to finish. So you saw just, interestingly, you saw drones on the video. So it's not, today, data exists everywhere. Of course, IoT devices is very, you know, data-driven. And today it's more important to get, to have ability to extract data from different sources. Interestingly, we see a lot of recent cases of attacks done by drones, right? Everybody heard about this, the attack on Saudi Arabia. And recently there was attacks, and I call it attacks on airports in Singapore and in London, which shut down the airports. This is becoming an epidemic. People are using drones because you can program the drones. You don't need Usually those drones are not, manually. It's not the drones that we like a kite, that you use it manually with somebody managing it, controlling it. It's pre-programmed to do the damage or to do the surveillance. And in some cases, it's not enough, of course. You need to be able to block those drones or take them down, but it's very important to take the information from the drone and understand who was using those drones to make harm. And in many cases, and luckily, in some of, you can extract the data if there is possible to extract the data. If the drone survived the crash, if you took it down, you can actually understand who was manipulating the drones and be able to see where was the safe house that the drone was supposed to go back and hopefully catch the bad guys. This has happened recently in Singapore, and we supported them, and people that was flying those drones or program were caught. I'll jump this. So you need to extract the data, you need to review the data, and you need to have investigation tools to be able to run analytics on your data, to be able to pinpoint the information you need, and you need to do it on the right time. If I do investigation of the data for a certain crime 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks afterwards, probably there will be no value. In many cases, it's a matter, law enforcement have, for instance, in some countries, 48 hours to detain a person, a suspect, before they need to let him go. So if they cannot get the information of, let's say, from his phone and be able to connect the dots and understand if this person was part of a certain crime, in 48 hours, he's gone, he's out. And probably if he did something, he will run away. Okay, so information and getting the information is crucial, and you need to be able to do it fast. But there is still a hope, because the information is, as I said, bad guys are still using the internet, and as long as people are doing mistakes while they're coding, we hopefully will be able to exploit those vulnerabilities and help the law enforcement to make the world safer. So thank you.
Hi, good morning to everyone. So we are a little bit late, so we'll try to go fast and finish the first session so that we can come back in time for the next session. So let me start my first question to Ayesh. How we're going to do this is that I will first pose a few questions and then open up for the audience. There'll be a few mics around, and if you can raise your hand and ask the questions very short so that we can get the answer and direct the question to a specific person, and then we can go with the presentation and the panel quite fast. So Ash, I'm sure you saw what is available digitally, and you have the financial investigation unit of the central bank. Now, how much do you use this digital data and the digital devices or the technology in terms of a financial crime investigation, and how fast you have been able to close the case which identifying the criminals?
First of all, thank you, Bhushan, for inviting me for this particular panel, and thank you for the speakers earlier. It was very insightful. First of all, I'd like to say that we would look at the financial intelligence, not necessarily the investigation part of it, but we look at the financial intelligence aspect of any particular area. And specifically with regard to today's topic, the cyber crimes is also an unlawful activity that falls within the gamuts of the money laundering aspect as well as terrorist financing side of the aspect. That's where we are quite keen on looking. Because of that cyber crime aspect being within the unlawful activity scenario, that we are particularly responsible in looking at it. But of course, at the forefront, the financial institutions themselves and the designated non-finance businesses as well, they themselves are responsible to identify it and of course send it. So there are many aspects to such investigation as well as intelligence involved. The fact that how soon that it comes to us and in what manner that it gets to us, of course, is quite crucial to any successful investigation. That's why depends on. So if I'm to pause and tell you a time frame, it all depends on how we get that information and in what manner that is accessible. How many times could we go back and get that time critical information intact without that being diluted or polluted in any way, so that it allows the investigators, the criminal investigation department, or maybe the financial crimes investigation division to go to the source. How soon would that get? So I would say that it is very time critical that we do this quickly and as undiluted as possible.
Thanks, Sash. So Conrad, I mean, you're into the IT field as well, and then there's a lot of developers also you deal with. So you saw what Sam mentioned, that, you know, most of the errors are on coding. And I think Sam has been in most of the DEF CONs presenting most of the vulnerabilities of major Fortune 500 companies also. And if a Fortune 500 company can have a coding error, what assurity do we have in our country and our region?
I think, thank you, Bhushan, for inviting me, as well as I think thanks, Sam, for your insightful presentation. It's quite interesting to know that some of the Fortune 500 companies are also having the bugs in terms of the simple things, which in terms of logging in vulnerabilities, right? So I think it's more, if you look at the today's topic, making the world a better, safer place is very much important today, looking at the digital adoption as every organization is going through. So challenge is that how, as an IT company, as well as taking over responsibility of a financial services organization in terms of IT, how we prevent that, right? So it's a challenge, but I think the events like this and some of the things that SICRA is doing in terms of training for safer coding, I think today, I think it's not just the coding. I think we are all training our kids just to be coders, but I think what is important is understanding the fundamentals of that, and then coding. I think Sam very correctly said, you know, some of these things are not new. These were available in the early era, and we have forgotten about it because of the pace of growth that which we are going through. The technology adoption that which we are challenged to go through, and I think we're doing that. So that's the problem that we need to solve. At the same time, I just wanted to, I was not picking on you. I think the answer that you said, you know, I'm generally when I come to a forum, I generally take it more. So I know that I think from a banking and financial services sector, because we are also representing banking and financial services sector to a certain extent, I think probably in my view, my personal opinion, not my organization's opinion, my personal opinion is I think that we are fighting against, probably if you look at the terrorism or anti-money laundering, is against one set of people. Probably the collaboration from the banking sector needs to happen much more in terms of fighting that. So I think the investments and the technology, I think Celebrite mentioned that some of these technologies are not available for the public, or the private companies. Some of these should be available, in my view, on a collaborative way to a bank like Central Bank or together with the financial services sector to fight the criminals, because we are fighting against the criminal. I mean, that's just an opinion of mine.
Sorry. So
in the meantime, I just wanted to comment, maybe it was not clear when I said that some of the technology is not available for the private sector. Obviously, banks, if they will go to the police to ask for the investigation, the police will provide. But if banks want to keep it in their own home, not to expose the fraud, and not to involve the law enforcement or the authorities, then that's their problem.
So until the matter sorted, Sam, the questions to Arthur. You were saying on the WhatsApp there are a lot of data that can be taken even though they are deleted. But the WhatsApp, it says this data is encrypted. So how is this possible?
So I come from an industry that a lot of technology companies in the past, security and others, what is called lawful interception. We used to provide technology to government and others to intercept the data and be able to understand what's going on. So of course, telecom industry, people can listen to calls and others, and of course try to take the information. To read the information. But of course, these days are over. So all the data today is encrypted over the internet, and then lawful interception, or if you you listen to a certain data channel, you can get the data, but it's encrypted, so you cannot do anything about it. But the encryption resides on the phone. So the encryption today is peer-to-peer, device to device. So if you can get a hold of the phone, okay, if you can get a hold of the phone, you're able, you basically, the data is unencrypted, okay, because we exploit the apps, and the apps doesn't know that the data is extracted from the phone. So with the actual keys of the app, I can decrypt and unlock and decrypt all the information. So once you have the device with the encryption, it's like, it's an open, you have the key.
So it's not a vulnerability on the WhatsApp, but it's a technology that you used to intercept.
Yeah, so I will not call it interception, because interception is taking something basically which is kind of over the air. On the device it's the exploit that we use on and when you call exploit is that there are some apps that will try to use another mechanism of authentication. So for instance, if you technically have the phone, and let's say the apps themselves, before you log into the app, you put an authentication or password to access the app, then technically it will be hard to get the data unless we can crack that. So we are actually doing that as well. We need to be able to crack the authentication of the app if you activated that.
Thank you. Are we ready with the question, Bandha?
Hi, I'm Dinesh Jayapalli from University of Calmare, undergraduate. My question is, like, now we have been using the textual and login authentication, but there are like the fingerprints and your face recognition and maybe the voice recognition. So what are the common mistakes that are done, or maybe like vulnerabilities in implementing these kinds of stuff, because now the technology is moving towards those kinds of stuff most time, like regard to the mobile app and all those.
Sam, would you like to?
I did not understand the question.
Okay. So can it be short, just one sentence? What was your question?
Like what are the vulnerabilities regard to the like modern terms of authentication, such as the fingerprints and maybe voice recognition?
So authentication vulnerabilities on the apps.
In what application?
Android?
In Celebrate?
Sorry?
So in phones and others.
Yeah, like just in general. Well, I mean, the phones are very secure, especially the Apple. I mean, these guys can get in the Apple, but Apple themselves can't get in the Apple anymore. So the phone itself is probably the gold standard of security, but nothing is safe. However, private companies are typically terrible, and they just do much more inferior things like we talked about. They don't store your passwords securely at the other end. They don't transmit them securely. And they store them in foolish places like on the phone. All these mistakes are very common. So as you know, everybody's accounts get hacked right and left. I think Apple is the most secure. What do you think?
So first of all, the more steps you put in the security or authentication, the better. So 2 steps login is definitely the right way, and I would say a lot of apps, I see them today applying this mechanism. So the more steps or more barrier you put, Obviously, it will help to get more security. On a side note, regarding the face authentication, or personally, I don't trust it. I come from my background also is from video analytics, and face recognition today is still not perfect. By the way, I have a twin brother. We tested the iPhone, and my twin brother can unlock my phone. So if you have a twin brother, have a look, try it. They're improving it, but I will not use it as the only authentication process. But if regards to the question, yeah, I think definitely iPhone is a most secure device you have today. Android is probably not so secure in my view, but iPhone is secured, and they're doing a good job to keep improving the security, and I think, yeah. But they're getting more and more expensive, I would say.
Ayush, I think you have something to add?
Yes, as respecting what the gentleman to my right had said, it's also partly the responsibility of the institutions that propagate or make use of these application software using the phones, that you are, of course, relying on a vendor. So, but the responsibility you have to remember is completely with the institution that should safeguard the customer's identification, etc. So that whatever said and done, the phone is just a tool. So it's up to the institution that relies on a particular vendor to safeguard that individual's data, information, and whatnot that customer is using. So basically what you have to look at is that responsibility that you are right now sharing with that particular vendor, it should not have any backdoors that allows certain cyber attacks to come in any way, maybe not with the vendor's known knowledge, maybe there is some weakness with regard to that vendor, maybe there are other ways that things can happen. So it's just that there is no shirking away from that responsibility that the institution that should share, that is being shared with him, whether it be a biometric identification, whether it be face recognition, whether it be any other innovative product that might come. So the responsibility has to be divested very responsibly by doing certain pre-audits as well as post-audits of using such application. So that responsibility you have to remember always is with the institution. Thank you.
I think just want to add something. I think they have a very particular technical question. I think two things I just want to say. I think the face recognition and whatever the biometrics which is there coming with the phone, I think it is there with them. So the challenge is, if an organization wants to adopt it, are you going to depend, as he said, are you going to depend on the technology which is given there, or are you going to store your biometrics in an organization which will have some more vulnerabilities as an organization when you store the data. So that's something that we need to really, that's something that I see as a challenge in terms of using biometrics. So they very categorically said that Android technology is still not perfected, but Apple is. But when it comes to, if you're using the phone's authentication, which comes with the built-in authentication, because that stays in the phone, whereas from a banking sector perspective, I know Central Bank really pushes the authentication to be at the server level. So if you're having at the server level, then you need to store that data, and storing of that data and the vulnerabilities which comes with that, similar to a password which is stored in a server, so that all that data protection mechanisms have to come in.
All right, so in the interest of time, and Deputy Governor is also already here for the next session, so we'll conclude the panel. I'm sure if there are any questions, this gentleman will be available during the breaks time. You can ask questions. So thank you very much for being here. So we'll end the panel now.